Welcome back to Morning at NTV, and we are on the hashtag Morning at NTV. The big topic of discussion today is sexually transmitted infections and sexually transmitted diseases. What do you need to know about this? Because many a times we only think that STIs and STDs revolve around HIV and AIDS alone. Earlier on we had Andrew Chamagero, who was at the Naguru Teenage and Information Center, speaking to the teenagers. Do they have this information, you know? What do they have to know? What do they take precautions when they get intimate? This is a big discussion that we need to have. And according to the World Health Organization, more than 1 million sexually transmitted infections are acquired every single day worldwide. In some cases, STIs can have serious reproductive health consequences beyond the immediate impact of the infection itself, you know, and some of this can actually cause to child mortality and child, adverse births when it comes to the pregnant women. And today in studio we have Dr. James Ayul, who is an aviation and public health specialist. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ray.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you for making time for us. Now, what is an STI and an STD? Many a times when you just speak of these terms, we think of HIV and AIDS, but there are many other infections that come into play. Tell us more about this.
Sure. Sexually transmitted infections, any microbes that can be transmitted from one person to another through the act of having sex. And this and STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, you know, and infections. People, you know, use them in one way or another, but
yeah,
they literally mean the same thing.
Okay.
A disease and an infection, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Germs, literally speaking, or the microbes, when I have to, you know, are tiny things that we don't see. And they are grouped according to their sizes. Mm-hmm. The bigger ones are the parasites.
Okay.
And we have the parasites like Trichomonas vaginalis that, you know, are transmitted sexually. We have even parasites like scabies.
Oh, wow. Scabies?
Yes. I mean, the sexual contact.
Okay.
You are in close, you know, contact, and you can get scabies, for example. And you come to the bacteria. The bacteria like gonorrhea, like we are going to see a lot more in details. Chlamydia, you know. Those are the bacteria that are transmitted, you know. Syphilis is a bacteria. Mm-hmm. Even the smaller size are the viruses, HIV being one of them.
Okay.
Human papillomavirus, one of them. Herpes, you know, is one of them. Even Ebola.
Correct.
Can be sexually transmitted, and these are the viruses. Hepatitis B and hepatitis C are well-known viruses that can be transmitted sexually. And then you have all this can be transmitted either as a single entity, or you can have gonorrhea. But you can also have gonorrhea being transmitted at the same time with HIV.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can also have gonorrhea being transmitted together with chlamydia.
So you can actually get a double infection in one go.
In one
instance.
Yes.
From one person.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about these STIs, because many a times we only think that, you know, if I don't have HIV, I'm okay. And it's because most of these STIs, like we had a discussion earlier on, do not show symptoms. Why is this? Why don't we see symptoms in most of the STIs?
One thing we should know is that these microbes or these germs have stayed with us for a long time. As long as humanity, you know, existed, we started having the STIs. I was reading in medical books the history of STIs some time ago, and by the time the early explorers came to Uganda, for example, in the 80s, 90s, they found already that we're having STDs.
Wow.
And I think around the colonial time, 1901 and all that, and coming to around where the penicillins of this world came into, Uganda was one of the places that actually they experimented a lot of these drugs. And So the microbes have stayed with us, and having stayed with us, they have evolved, and they keep evolving, you know, for them to survive, because they enjoy us, you know.
So with time, then they hide, and then you don't see symptoms, or what exactly is it?
Yes, and a bacteria like chlamydia will take several days before you realize it.
Okay.
Gonorrhea, for example, will take a few days. In men, 4 to 8 days, a man is always feeling pain, especially when he goes to urinate.
Okay.
He will start seeing, you know, discharges in his sexual organ. Ladies, on the other side, when a lady gets a gonorrhea, will take several days and even months without knowing it.
Wow.
And that's the unfortunate bit of it. In fact, we used to say that if ladies could, I mean, gonorrhea could show up very fast in ladies, just like it shows up in men, probably this would be an historical infection. Because we know they have seeking behavior. Sometimes ladies are, you know, more faster than men, because in other gonorrhea and chlamydia especially also have more adverse effects on ladies, probably than men. Of course, for the reasons that it shows us very late, but also for the fact that it leads to secondary infant fertility, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it has a direct effect, especially for pregnant mothers.
When you get an infection of gonorrhea or chlamydia, in that case, in ladies, it will not show up. It actually doesn't tend to affect the urethra. Just men, it will affect the urethra, which is the same tube they use for passing urine and for, you know, passing the sexual, you know, fluids. In ladies, it affects the birth canal, and it likes the cervix, which is high up. After several weeks, they will feel some mild low abdominal pain, you know, and they will ignore it. They may think maybe only just some fatigue. A few ladies will see some discharge, which, you know, they may not take it seriously. Most ladies then will show up when has gone beyond the cervix, has climbed into the uterus itself, and affects the lining of the uterus cavity. And if not realized at that point, it goes to the tubes.
It goes to the tubes. And
according to our knowledge of, basic knowledge of, we know that for reproduction to take place, the eggs, the ova have to migrate, you know, from the ovaries through the tubes, which must be patterned into the uterine cavity. So if it affects the tubes and it's not treated, it's going to do two things. One, it will make it not a smooth passage, creating holes, you know. And if you create holes during the process of, even if you are treated, it will remain with, you know, a rough passage. The tube will have a rough passage, so that when the ova are, you know, moving, coming for the fertilization, they will meet and they will fail to move. And you've had what you call ectopic pregnancy. And studies have shown that, you know, these infections are one of the, you know, the causes of what? Ectopic pregnancy, because the smoothness of the fallopian tube is distorted. And in your and later, if also you don't treat it, I mean, it is a good number of them get blocked, and you don't see a kid. So you find most times ladies start showing up with now, you know, pain, especially pain, which come a few days before they see their periods. And when I'm always mentoring my young colleagues, and I tell them, when a lady comes and tell them, I feel pain during my periods, and I say, be curious, does the pain come a few days before the period starts? And that is quite key when you're taking the history of, you know. So these are some of the, you know, the adverse effects of some of these infections, especially for ladies.
You mentioned that, especially in ladies, which is quite unfortunate. I think we are not lucky in this. It takes some time for it to, you know, for it to manifest. Does it then mean that we need to always go into checkups? Because, okay, fine, I know you emphasize on the need of, ladies or, partners, people who are sexually active to maintain one partner. But trust is another thing and a topic for another day. So does it mean that we need to go for checkups ever so frequently if we indulge in sex every so frequently?
Yes, the unfortunate bit is that, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, people have a very poor health-seeking behavior. We tend to go when we are already grounded, for financial reasons. But I think it's one thing that, especially for the young people, it must change. Once a young person becomes sexually active, try as much as possible to go for checkups, because you never know. I told you earlier that these microbes have stayed with us for a long time, and a good number of them show up so late.
Correct.
Yeah, they show up so late. And syphilis, for example, when you get syphilis, you will not know it. It may show a small scratch in your private area, which will even heal after a few days without any medication.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh,
and
wow.
The next time it will showing up, it is in a different stage where it comes back with some other swellings around your private part, which is not even painful. And you know that most people run to the health facility because of pain.
Yes. Yes.
And this is something initially showing up without pain. Giving you pain.
So if you see anything abnormal in your, in your system, then go to the hospital. Don't wait until it's painful.
I was recently shocked. I was up country in the hospital, and I camped there for a week. And I've seen people coming with secondary stage of syphilis.
Wow.
And with a textbook description of,
Yeah.
And I shared with my colleagues. I say, you know what? I've not seen this in a long time, but
Yeah.
you send to the laboratory to confirm, and the lab technician tells you it is strongly reactive, and it's like, and interestingly, you put them very simple. It's very simple treatment. Within a few days, you see them say, "Oh, doctor,
Yeah, I'm fine."
Yeah.
So it can actually be treatable 100%.
Oh, sure. I mean, a good number of them, like syphilis cures even with a one shot.
Oh, wow.
And you only give other shots now to make sure that you really eradicate them completely, especially if somebody has stayed with it for a long time.
Yes.
Gonorrhea is treatable, and the medicines that clear them completely. Chlamydia, which actually has been studies have shown that even worse in causing infertility in ladies, that I was trying to explain.
Yes.
It's curable. Of course, we have the ones that are not curable, still, like HIV.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That I'll talk a little bit more about.
So then, how often do we go for these checkups? Because if it's only HIV that is not curable, but all these others we can actually cure and treat, how often should I go for checkups? How often should we go for checkups? Because they don't have symptoms or signs.
As I said, once you are sexually active, I'm actually happy that this center in Naguru is already having, bring the youth together.
Yes.
And we actually know that youth, probably they're trying to try things,
Yes.
because, and they get excited much more probably than the adults, and they lack information. So I'm really happy that a center like that is bringing youth, giving them information, and spreading the information to others. And I'm also happy that they're having programs of even reaching schools, because these are teenagers, and they want to try things. And unfortunately, they're trying things in
the wrong
a highly
way.
contaminated world.
Yes.
As far as microbes and infections are concerned. HIV,
How often?
for example, in the 80s and early 90s, when HIV came, it killed so many people. It killed so many people that actually, I always read, even Uganda and other, sub-Saharan African, the cases went down. And they're saying, okay, there was condoms, or there was awareness. Yes, awareness played a very key role. But one of the things that actually I don't see people writing in the books is that the cases died.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
If we have 100 people, and 20 of them have HIV. I'm talking about that time.
Yes.
And there's no treatment that will bring the viral load down, they'll die.
Yes.
Remember, it used to call slim. It makes you, you know, tiny and wasted, and you go off.
Yes.
So two things happen. One, they die, and if you die, you stop infecting other people.
It's true.
And that's what happened. And that's how they what? And also, you know, you stop being counted, you know.
Yeah. You become a non-statistic.
And also, when you are sick, HIV grounds you. You are chronically down. So you don't have time to go and, you know, have sex and, you know, and transmit it. So that's just another factor.
So how often?
So those are natural factors that actually brought HIV down.
Yes.
Besides, of course, I mean, people now, you know, being aware, using protectives, and then came the era of the ARVs, which have also played a great role in making people to survive. And for the young people, it's even worse today, because unless those days, the cases were dying. Now the cases
are living longer.
By cases, I meaning those who are infected,
yes.
they are living longer.
And they actually look very healthy.
And there are so many.
Yes.
There are so many out there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
There are so many out there, and you know, yeah. When you look at the statistics of Uganda, for example, in other sub-Saharan African countries, the cases, I mean, it came down and then started climbing up, and you find the scientists, you know, scratching their head, because we have a lot of potential people to infect others.
I agree. And the question still remains, how often then do we go for checkups, especially for us women? Because you've mentioned, if we get this infection, leave alone HIV, you know, HPVs, you know, gonorrhea, syphilis, it takes time for it to manifest. How often do we go for checkups then to ensure they don't get to the end stage?
If you find that you have undergone and unprotected sexual contact, I think within 2 or 3 days go for a check. But I'm not saying you go for an HIV check,
yes.
because HIV will definitely take 3 months or so to start showing up.
Yes.
But you're going to check for these other STDs.
And Daktari, for example, let's talk about people in marriage, people in faithful relationships. As women, how often do you recommend for us to go for these checkups? Because, you know, fine, you'd say trust needs to play, but how often do you, because for you guys, you're advocates of us taking charge of our personal health. So I am in a, you know, monogamous kind of relationship where we have trust, but you never know what this other party is doing. So how often should I go for checkup? If
you can every 6 months go for a checkup,
okay,
that would be very healthy.
Because
you'll be able to discover, you know, any infection that may come. For example, HIV. If you find you have HIV, like these days, the policy now is that immediately somebody's positive, start on ARVs. The earlier you start on ARVs, the better. The better for the outcome of your survival.
Correct.
The better for you even transmitting it to other people, because it lowers, you know, the viral load.
Correct.
And
correct. Dr. You've interacted with many patients, especially the young people. When they come to your clinics, what is their main worry? Is it for girls? Is it pregnancy? Is it HIV? For the men, what exactly is it? What do they come and say? Okay, after you've done that test and it's negative, they're like, okay, phew, I'm okay.
Honestly, most young people, especially ladies, I think they're more scared of pregnancy these days than HIV, which is very unfortunate. Of course, all of them, you know, you find somebody coming, and always I tell my especially younger colleagues to spend more time with the client, more so even the younger clients.
Correct.
Because STDs or STIs in that case, being in the I mean, you get it through a private, you know, kind of, and it affects the most private part of your body. People are definitely very shy, leave alone on the young people. By the way, sometimes young people are even more open than adults. That's the experience I've seen. Sometimes young people are even more open to doctors than
the young people,
than the older people.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The younger people, they tend to. But the more time you spend with them, because I have personally and many other colleagues discovered an STD, which actually is the main thing that has brought somebody to the clinic, and they start by saying, oh, you know, this headache, and you know, and then they tell you something different. So if you also just, you know, in a hurry and you've not really examined and asked more probing questions or more, you know, leading questions, the person will end up sometimes even going with the same problem. And in some cases, they don't even know it's an STI. And, you know, because I told you these microbes have stayed with us and they have even changed the way they present. And as I said, for example, in ladies, the gonorrhea will present like some mild back pain. So a lady coming with a back pain, if you just, you know, don't, you know, probe more questions, you will treat something else, and you know, and then they say, oh, that doctor is not good. Of course, you're not good because you have not spent enough time with that
with the patient.
With the patient.
Yeah, I understand that we have questions for you, Dr. From Chamagero on ground. He's at the Naguru Center for Information for Teenagers. I hear, Andrew Chamagero, I hear you have Keith on standby. He has a question for Dr. Andrew?
Yes.
Yes?
Keith has a question.
Keith, shoot.
The question is that, as a doctor, as he's a doctor, I want to ask him his perception about the youth using condoms to prevent the STIs. Like, I mean, that age from 10 years up to 15 years. Because as they take the, sometime some big people say that the youth are not allowed to use such contraceptive measures, yeah, to prevent themselves from getting the STIs and STDs. So they all say that they should what? They should abstain. And as a parent, how does what does he say about it?
Okay. All right, that is Keith. Ruth, quick one here. We are having only 2 questions for purposes of time. Yes, okay. Ruth, your question?
My question is, I've heard him talk about something about HIV. What is viral load in HIV?
Okay. There you have it, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you. Keith, thank you for your question. One thing is that as long as you make sexual contact, you can pick any of this. All these microbes that I explained to you. And condoms, in the case of a 15 to, youth, is not only a contraceptive, it's actually a barrier. We call it the barrier method. And the barrier method will help you from the microbes entering into your system. And yes, we have, culturally, we believe that very young people, legal above 18, should not. But we know that they do. And youth, if you can't avoid, you must use those protectives.
Correct.
Yes. I used to work with a PEPFAR program, one time I went to Kenya in somewhere in Gatundu, in a hospital, and actually I was happy that they mentioned that in hospitals now we are having those youth-friendly,
Yes.
So I was working for AMREF at that time, and we went to this hospital in Gatundu, somewhere in Kenya, and we found young people as young as 10 coming, and the counselor actually told me that they give them condoms, and I was like, okay, I think it's good to give them condoms, because they would rather use it if they're already active,
correct,
than not to use it, because we know the effect of having HIV. If you're not going to die, you're going to have a chronic problem, throughout your life. We know the effects of, having all these other STIs that for ladies, I told you, you can even block your tubes, you can have, complications like ectopic pregnancies, infertility, you end up not having a kid, all that. So I think let them have it if they cannot. We know, of course, there's been a very big breakage in the cultural norms. Kids have a lot of exposure than probably in some years before.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think we have to match with the what?
With the
trend.
And agree that they're actually active.
If we have to keep the youth safe.
Yes.
Yeah. Ruth asked about the viral load. The viral load, literally speaking, it's the number of the viruses that you have per, you may be a cubic millimeter. If I take a millimeter of, or a mil of blood to somebody who is infected with HIV and is not on treatment with ARVs, and I take the same blood, I mean, with somebody who is not on treatment, the person who is having treatment have the fewer number of viruses, because that medicine reduces the number of viruses in your body, and that's what we call, literally defining it, a viral load. And if and that's why the policies of the Ministry of Health is emphasizing that people should go early for treatment, because if you have a higher viral load, you have a likelihood of your system breaking down faster and you dying faster.
Yep. And Dr. still on the youth and the teenagers, do you think then this is a discussion that we need to have with our children? Because you mentioned that you actually went to Gatundu, and children that are as young as 10 years old were already sexually active and they are being given condoms. Do we as parents now need to accept that, you know what, like you're saying, the times have changed, let's have these conversations, and if our children are actually active, do we then support? Because if they've already started, then getting them back to being, you know, not being active sexually is another big whole question that is close to impossible, in your opinion.
I think importantly, of course, I mean, we need to discourage our children from having sex early. Correct. Because we know all these, you know, multiples of infections that, you know, they're exposed to, you know. But if they cannot, let's encourage this kind of youth, what's called youth-friendly services in our health institutions, so that it's one of the ways that we contribute in protecting our kids. Of course, I know culturally it is still a little bit difficult. Even the most developed countries I've been to, for parents to, you know, freely share issues of sex with children and all that. It takes a while, you know, you're still thinking they're kids and all that, and yet, you know, so I think the youth-friendly services in our health institutions is quite key.
Let's talk about the myths when it comes to STIs and STDs. Let's bust them. I've heard people saying that if you use public toilets that are not, you know, clean enough, you can actually get an STI, especially for us ladies. Is that true? Two, the people in the public, people who say that, you know what, for ladies, if you are taking a birth control, then it can actually protect you from having or getting an STI. Is this true?
Let me start with the birth control.
Correct.
That is absolutely not true.
Yes.
Birth controls that are prescribed by our health institutions have been worked on for several years. In fact, medicines that and those contraceptives, before they're released for public use, a lot of research have been done on them. So they do not cause it. That is just a myth. Toilets. I've been having actually, we colleagues, we have been talking a lot about this.
Yes.
When you look at all these microbes, for example, for them to survive, they need warmth. They need sugar. They need, you know, to survive. So they are best, you know, they survive best in the bodies. Of course, I mean, if you have blood which has just poured and it's fresh, I mean, somebody can easily what?
Get it.
And especially if somebody has exposes his or her mucous membranes. Yes, some infection can go through. But believe me, with experience, most of the people come telling you, oh, I think I get this from the toilet. Of course, we the doctors will listen to it. Okay, yeah, that toilet really, you know.
Yes.
But I think very, very few, if at all, infections come through the toilet.
Come through the toilet. Come through the toilet. So as we come to a close, what are your parting shots for the teenagers and also for couples? And if not couples, for the sexually active adults? What should we all do? Because STIs do not discriminate against age. So what should we do to protect ourselves from getting these STIs? And if at all we do, what steps should we take to make sure that we are actually treated and these things are cured?
For couples, I think every 6 to 12 months, go for a checkup.
Together?
Yes. good together. I've seen in most cases, especially when they started encouraging at antenatal, clinics. They ask you to go with the cop.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very good, health-seeking behavior. And this can be extended beyond. Young people, if you get exposed, go for a checkup within. Don't let a week pass by. Go for a checkup.
And exposed is
sexually
without protection.
Exposed.
Okay.
Sex without protection.
Without condoms.
But even with the protections, you should actually be taught and use those protections carefully, because you may be having a false impression that you're protected when you're using it wrongly.
Okay.
Yeah, and this has been shown in many examples in the past. The policies of the countries actually also need to be changing towards addressing the issues of the youth, because studies have shown recently that HIV is even more higher in the younger age group. I think because somehow we focus somewhere else and we are forgetting them. Our hospitals, our health facilities, both public and private, I think, need to take into
consideration.
Considering the young people and having youth-friendly services.
Okay.
The persons they can fully go and talk to.
All right.
The teenagers, for example, they would probably fear in being open. But I also told you that I've seen very many young people. They come and get more open. They're more open than adults.
Yes.
And also, fellow colleagues, the doctors, we need to spend, especially younger colleagues, who wants to see many patients with them. You need to spend a little bit more time.
Correct.
And examine thoroughly a patient.
Examine thoroughly a patient. Yes. Take more time with your patients. That has been it from the solution segment on today's topic, sexually transmitted infections and sexually transmitted diseases. If you still have questions, the hashtag is morning at NTV, and we'll be sure to pose those questions to Dr. Reed thereafter. We're taking a short commercial break, but we'll be right back with Take Notes.